2024. We'll follow our standard approach of going through the issues tagged in the issue that was generated for the gender, which was 1652 in the repo. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements they would like to share?
I've just released Node 20.18.1. I'm about to share on social media. I want to just say kudos to Antoine for automating the release process. It made it much easier and quicker, so kudos.
Okay, that's great. Just putting that in the minutes. And okay, any other announcements that people would like to share? If not, I will move on to the reminders. Remember to nominate people for the contributor spotlight. As if we have good work, it'd be good to
announcement. Sorry,
an announcement. Okay, yeah, Matteo, go ahead.
Is the GitHub? So GitHub did a program for open source, okay, for open security, open source, and we can ask for some funding if some of us would like to go through some training, okay. Essentially, that's the source of the program, but you can get the gist. It could be a good way to have somebody, skill up on some security issues, as well as some pay time to work on security stuff related to Node.js. So if you want to apply, we can. It's like $10,000 or something. So.
And are you thinking that like we're looking for volunteers and then the project will get the dollars, or like that we'd somehow try and pass those dollars through to the people taking the training, or?
So
just so we're clear.
So we are talking about a 10-hour commitment each week for 3 weeks. So let's say 30 weeks. Essentially, it's a week of work of training. Okay.
So did you say 10 hours per week or
5 to 10? It says found. This is the gist, the program. Let me pass it. I can open an issue if you want to, if we want to apply in Discord.
Right. Yeah, I think it would be good to open an issue because, like, yeah, I think we should, and it's a matter of finding volunteers who will do the work related, and we can, in that issue, we can discuss like, do we use the dollars to help get people time to do that, or is it just volunteer or whatever? But anyway, an issue would be a great place.
Well, for me, what I would propose is to do 50-50 type of thing. Okay?
Sure. Yeah, like that's
or maybe even go to the all individual, but then the individual will spend, I don't know, this amount of time to implement some security related feature or some security related automation, something like that.
Yeah, a mix like that or whatever. I like, so yeah, let's open an issue and start discussing how
I'm opening an issue on the TSC. Okay, so for our next discussion.
Okay, that sounds good. Any other announcements? Okay, good. Right, so we're on to the issues. The first one is test improve zlib tests. Actually, sorry, before I do that, CPC and board meeting updates. I don't know, Matteo, if there's anything there to update on.
So the biggest thing, okay, from a board perspective, and is that we are planning for next year. Okay, the biggest expenditure following up Robin Ginn talk at NodeConf. Okay, the biggest expenditure of the foundation will be the conference. Okay, and everything has been taken care. So ideally, there's not going to be too much of blowback in case we don't hit all the numbers. Okay, so all the attendees numbers, but there is going to be a CFP opening soon. And we need to essentially think if we want to do a club summit there or not. But the biggest focus right now is that.
I guess from my mind, it's like, why wouldn't we do one there, right? Versus somewhere else.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's the location is looks amazing. Okay, it's easily reachable from Washington, so and Baltimore. Okay, it's yeah, that's it essentially.
Yeah, maybe that like opening another issue, which is like, let's, can we confirm that we'll do a collab summit at that conference? Because that would be
Yeah, I'm opening two. Okay, great.
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah, that's I think that's the biggest update. I am not sure if it already happened or is going to happen. The Express project is moving back, is becoming an impact project. I don't know if you have been following the renaissance of Express. Okay, I am very happy to say that the hard work that the team put in happened and made things better for the project. So the project is alive again, essentially. And they are, yeah, and they're part of the family, essentially.
Yeah, and I think one of the major things that was holding it back before was governance, and now it's really moved to a good governance that fits with being an impact project. So that's good.
Exactly. Well, given the amount of work, anything but a big team would not have cut it. Like the biggest challenge is from moving from a one individual to a big team very quickly to scale the load. So kudos to the team that made that happen.
Any other announcements, or sorry, any more CPC board meeting updates before we go into the issues? Okay, if not, the first one is test improve zlib tests. That's number 55716. If anybody's here who opened that one, put it on the agenda, just jump in. Otherwise,
Yeah. Hi all. I added it to the TST agenda.
Yeah.
So basically the pull request removes some redundant tests and also uses node test in several places where it wasn't used before. The reasoning for my change is basically two things. One of them is so we are currently maintaining two different test runners, meaning we have a node test, we have a Python-based test, which we also use some internal functions in common file, which depends on things that other runtimes don't support, such as process on exit hooks and so on and so forth. And I wanted to simplify those things, meaning instead of depending on process on exit hooks, I wanted to create this promise with resolvers, and which made callback based testing a lot more synchronous, because we can only resolve the callback result depending on the promise and so on and so forth. So this requires async await, and without node test, we need to wrap each of those tests inside async await function, and we need to invoke it. And yeah, without node test, it would have been a lot less readable. That was my intention. And on top of that, I realized that because there's no strict guidance about how each files are named and how some of the tests doesn't have any descriptions, I realized that there's multiple places that we test the same exact thing, and node test it forces us to use a description for it. So this was my intention, and one of the contributors blocked it due to the added complexity and supergist code executed as part of the test, which should also affect the reliability of the test itself. As far as I know, this is not a problem right now, but rather a hypothetical issue that may arise in the future. And yeah, I wanted to talk about it.
I remember some of our discussion last time, And one of the first things for me, and I think somebody else mentioned as well, is like, if the goal is to let the test be runnable with something other than Node, using Node tests seem to be the opposite of that, right? Like, because they won't have Node test built in, so then you couldn't run those tests. So like that part seemed confusing to us. So I don't know what if you can clarify that.
So node test doesn't exist. So just to clarify, I work at Cloudflare. Most of you know, but our viewers might not know it. So currently Cloudflare Workers doesn't have node test, but it might in the future. But the choice of using node test is somewhat unrelated to it. To me working at Cloudflare, it's mostly about the verbosity of the tests and having a much more readable test, so that we don't need to have this anonymous functions everywhere in the test file, which got wrapped by a function that get executed afterwards. So yeah, that was my reasoning. But any runtime can implement node tests and basically use this functionality if they choose to in the future.
I guess the argument would be, though, if you use something other than node test, then they don't have to implement something new. Joy had her hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I took a brief look into the tests being written, and I don't think they were previously, like they were wrapped previously in command the mouse call, and they are now wrapped in some async function. I don't see how different it is before and afterwards. There's like still kind of like a similar level of indentation around, and it doesn't seem to like actually make it a lot better in my opinion. Like just judging from these few tests being updated themselves. I think another benefit for adding descriptions can actually just be done by like whether I just add more comments. And the descriptions are not actually that like there's no requirement about how descriptive you put in to description. It could also just be like a few words, which can be equally unreadable. Like they don't actually give you that many additional information because there's no requirement about how detailed you should be in the test description. So yeah, I would say I would not object, but the argument for porting to no test seems pretty like not very convincing for me for these tests in particular. I'm sure there are different kind of tests. There are like already super async where you get benefit from not having to do the top level way in a having to like wrap it in a async IFE. But the tests being modified here in this pull request are not in that category as far as I can tell.
So the problem that I see is that there's already lots of tests that use node test, which is outside of the scope of node test. And because we don't have any specific requirements, some of them got landed, some of them didn't, including this PR. And since we have two different test runners, I see this as an opportunity to clarify what is the requirements or what is like how should we proceed these kinds of tests. And without node test, one thing that I really like it is that if any of the tests fail, we know where to look at rather than the particular line that throws the error, and we manually have to go through that line and in order to find the comment and say that this failed because of this requirement. And with node test, we can directly see this.
I
think
wonder,
you
like
might-
for me, so go ahead.
I think in my experience, I run into something opposite, which is if a test fails, the whole test suite will continue to run. So you have to fish out which one of the tests is failing. And also, if you try to console the log, it's not logging at the place where the failure happened. That's one of the reasons why I don't usually use this, because I don't want to have a hard time fishing out console the log. Not sure if that's currently resolved. But at least as far as these tests are concerned, they don't look like really have to be ported to no test.
So I wanted to correct you. There is no requirement to done this. I only did this to simplify the code, and I worked on this just recently on Cloudflare workers, and I manually implemented and ported all of those tests to Workerd. And while I looked into it, I realized that all of these tests are extremely hard to keep track while implementing the actual zlib stuff. So this is not done particularly for Cloudflare workers. The work for zlib is already implemented. This is for the clarity and the simplification of our node tests, where we run tons of redundant tests that tested by other tests. So we can go ahead and close this PR, but the issue is we need to have a common discussion where whether about where we can use node test or not, because it's currently in everywhere.
Right. One suggestion I'd have is like maybe it would be good to try and PR something into our collaborator guide, which is like, you know, or I don't know if we have something like a doc on writing tests or somewhere in the collaborator guide that would capture like what's our direction, and that would be something that we could agree on, you know, at the high level versus like, hey, does this particular test benefit or not? And I think that would also potentially cover like, do we actually want to move everything into that direction, or is it just like as new tests come in? Roy has his hand up.
Right. I just like to mention that in the last Code and Learn we're in a workshop in NodeConf.eu, and the issues were basically converting some tests to use no tests. So I assume there was consensus that we kind of wanted to use that in most places that make sense, but it doesn't seem like we have consensus on that. So yeah, we should probably try to form a consensus either way, so that it's gonna be good either for that kind of like Code and Learn, right? Like, or just random PRs like this one.
Yeah, I asked somebody about that, and they were like, well, these weren't necessarily it was like, well, we just thought it because it was like reasonable work to do, not necessarily that they would land. But yeah, I think, you know, that's back to like we should probably build a consensus. I think like a PR is where we often come to like a conclusion, and then that would actually capture what that consensus was. So that I think would be nice as a record, right?
So one thing that I want to mention before we skip to the next issue is that, do we have any consensus about reducing the usage of common and using more promise with resolvers, so that we don't we don't depend on the internal test runner of Node.js?
Have you checked out the sorry, should I raise my hand first?
Okay, Matteo has his hand up.
I generically, I don't think there is we can put a rule in stone like that. Okay. I essentially prefer to use our internal one for all the core components. Okay. Specifically, it's specifically, okay, the parts that are used by the test runner itself. Okay, I really don't want them to be tested using the test runner, because otherwise we have in a chicken and egg situation. Okay, This is essentially, that will be my rule of thumb. Okay, if that means we put that rule of thumb in the collaborator guide, that for me this is something that we can easily do. Okay, that my the rule of thumb is don't use the for everything else. So this means, I don't know, if I go by recall, we don't want to test process, we don't want to test async hooks, we don't want to test events, we don't want to test the bootstrap of the process, like all the things that are correlated to the test run. Okay? So that if if we break something, okay, we can still run the harness. Okay, that's my well, the test runner should not be used to test itself. I don't necessarily think so, because it's actually very hard to test a test runner without testing itself, running itself. Okay.
Okay,
but
so your thing's the dependencies is what you're trying to say. Okay.
yes, I'm talking about the
So-
dependence of the test runner. Okay, that's my take. Okay, that's just where we think we differentiate. Okay, so if something that is used in the internals or for if it's used by that dependency chain, or we plan to have that dependency chain, that would be probably for me, it would be the discrimination things, the discriminator, essentially. As part, the other thing that Yagith mentioned was we use promise with resolvers. Okay. I generically prefer if we can hold back with that for a while more, not because I don't like it, but because I worry about backward compatibility. So we still have V18 around, and having that doesn't have that utility. I don't remember if 20 has that utility, but I don't think so. So I generically prefer, for the sake of back portability and less work to be done to backport things, to not change all the things to use promise with resolvers everywhere in the code base, because otherwise it's a lot of work to backport changes. That's it.
Joey had her hand up next.
I don't know if you guys want to respond to Mateo's point, or should I?
I can quickly. I kind of agree with Mattia about not using no test runner dependencies, like not using no test runner in one of its dependencies because of the chicken egg problem. That's convincing enough when Mattia says it. I think promise with resolvers is available after version 22, but it can easily be backported to any node runners. We just need to create a function, and we already had it in the past, like create deferred promise function, which returns an object, blah blah. So we can do this. So it's not a problem, but it would cause some issues because we need to manually change each of those lines. And my reasoning with changing zlib is that zlib is the most stable functionality that I've ever known of that didn't had any bugs or issues in the past God knows how many years. And that's why.
Joey?
So about using promise resolvers, I wonder if you have checked, because I see in the conversions that you did, for example, you put the reject in the error handler, the error event listener, and then you await the promise at the end. So I'm just wondering, have you checked, like, if that actually fails, like, what kind of error stack trace would you see compared to what we had with command must not call? Because I recall like trying to see the error stack trace from a unexpected rejection could be like quite confusing, because we usually don't have the best stack traces in these places. So if it improves the stack trace, if this pattern improves the stack trace, I will be in favor. But if it makes the stack trace even more useless, because with promises is always kind of difficult, then I think that that probably should not be what we'd be doing. Like, I think whatever we do should optimize towards more informative error stack trace when the assertions actually fail. So yeah, that's my suggestion.
Okay, I think we should possibly move on to other issues. We've had a pretty good discussion. Anything we should close out on this before we move on to the next issue? I mean, I think it seems to me the next action would be to somewhere like try and, a PR or an issue where we're going to document what our direction is so that, it's not every individual PR needs to make the case. It's like, hey, here's the approach we've agreed to. You guys go ahead.
Yes, I will open a PR to the contributor guideline so that so that we document certain things such as Node test runner should not be used in one of the dependencies of Node test runner, such as these modules. And then we can take that discussion as a baseline to have a more consensus about using the test runner. And then we can either close this PR or not, depending on the outcome of that PR. And I would appreciate if we can keep it in the agenda while this discussion continues. Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay, promote Antoine came back. Okay, so just moving on to the next issue then. Add partial deep strict equal. If anybody's here who added that to the agenda, jump in. Otherwise, I'm going to open it up. Looking to see agenda. Oop, where are we? Sorry, I'm trying to find where in there. It's not helping me. Guess this, I'm trying to, I can't seem to find where it was added to the agenda. Just to see who added it.
Which issue? Sorry.
Maybe it's hidden. This is add partial deep strict equal.
So this was added. This was added a while back. Okay.
Yep.
Because there was no consensus on the name.
Yeah, I believe
Okay.
the name is now resolved. It's more about the functionality itself that is not yet fully
Yeah, but
fleshed out.
sorry, the reason it was added was because there was a blocker on the name. Okay.
Yeah, but that's gone. Like I believe we are all settled on the name by now.
Okay, the name is solved. Okay, good. So even if the name is solved, is there any blockers or just what needs to be done?
There is no blocker. It, out of my perspective, and that's something we can still discuss. The implementation still has issues. So it's definitely not fully implemented. It would not pass, for example, being a direct replacement for is deep strict equal, and those should all pass. And we still have to define the specific cases for what we want to accept on top of that.
But I guess the point might be like it doesn't need to be on the TSC agenda anymore. It's just working it through the process because the name has been agreed, right? Is that right?
Pretty much, yes.
I see Marco has his hand up.
Yeah, so I've been following this issue for some time. I think that it's just the fact that it doesn't work 100% how it should be. So there is still some technical issues. My proposal is to land it as experimental and iterate on it because it has been open for many months, and I don't think it's something so controversial that like we don't want to land it. I find it personally useful, so that is what I propose for this issue.
Yeah, that's also what I commented upon earlier on it. I believe Tobias still wanted it to be a little bit more detailed, but there was no block, and we could theoretically go ahead if everyone is fine with that and land it, because the experimental part is in there as well by now. I asked for it.
Okay, so I think my understanding is like, as a regular process, it's, discussion and it's proceeding. So we can take it off the agenda and, if somebody could add it back if there needs to be some question answered or something like that. Does that match everybody's understanding? I don't hear anybody saying no, so I'll take it off and we can move on to the next issue. Does that make sense? Okay, moving on to the next one, add vetted courses. This is 7201. I believe this was added by Matteo, and there's some discussion about, I guess some concern was raised over like letting people put their paid courses on the website. And I think it was probably added, like Matteo, you added it to the agenda as an FYI to get people involved in the discussion. Is anything else we should?
I think this is something that the TSC should put the decision on. Like I frankly am not, like I don't think it's, like I think we should make a decision ourselves. Okay, I don't look like, it doesn't look like it's something that we can, devolve. Like this is, related to how the projects communicate with the rest of the world, right? So I think this is, decision like this more or less falls on us. Like we need to essentially make a decision. Especially Rafael doesn't seem to be happy with the proposal. Okay, so if we wanted to do it, we will probably need to do a vote anyway.
I think a concrete next step could be a PR to the ambassador program that basically says something like, as part of the ambassador program, each ambassador will have, we would add to the website a page which is like node ambassador recommendations, right? And then each ambassador could have a section on that page which is like, here's my 3 or 4 recommendations of good content. And it would be okay if that content is from the ambassador and be, even if it was paid.
Yeah.
And then we could actually, like that PR, we could go through the PR process. If there's objections, then it could come back to the TSC for a vote.
Okay.
And does that make sense? Like,
yeah. I'll send up here.
okay, sounds good. Just like that, that'll force closure, right? Like we don't really object to an issue where we do object to a PR and then it can come back. Yeah. Okay. And then it would be documented exactly what they would get. And like, I'm happy to help with that as well. So. Okay. So I think we'll PR in and discuss there, and Matteo will PR in and we will discuss and deal with any. So there. Sounds good. So I'm gonna take that off the agenda for now, or should I leave it on as an FYI?
No, you can remove it. You can remove
it. I'll take it off for now, and then if we get a block on the actual PR, we can go from there. I think that's good. Okay, Feet, add streams guide. This is number 7123. Again, if you're involved or have added that to the agenda, please.
I have not checked, like we discussed this last week, but I am very busy with other stuff right now, and I didn't have time to look at it. So
okay.
I have no news. If somebody looked at it, I'm sorry. We can keep it on the agenda for next time. I hope I will take some time to look at what's in there.
Okay. So should I comment that? Basically say, hey, you're planning to look, so don't land it until you do.
No, it can land. If it can land. Like I knew there was some objection. I didn't look at what people I knew there is some activity. I didn't look at it. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So I
I
put
think
it
like
on
the
the
con-
agenda because other people objected.
Okay, okay, sounds good.
So that's my part. If this is yeah, if there is anything that I personally need to do there, I don't
Okay.
have the time now. Okay, that's my point.
Okay. So we'll leave on the agenda for now.
Bye, Moshe.
Okay, so let's move on to the next issue, which is clarify the charter so that contractors are explicitly counted as affiliated. This one, I guess, Matteo, you added as well, and I think that must be for an FYI because it doesn't look like there's any objections or anything like that.
That's just an FYI.
I guess in terms of the charter, we're gonna need to get the CPC to approve, right?
Yeah. Like this is. I don't think there is anything like. The sentiment is that, okay. It was noted that it for somebody read ambiguously. Okay. I frankly had no doubt in the ambiguity, but
Yeah,
This-
no, it doesn't hurt to make things explicit and
it doesn't hurt to make. In the past we counted, even companies within the same group as the same things.
Yeah.
We did. It's let's put it that way. We considered it very much independent, okay, and in a very broad sense. That term employment in a very broad sense. So they should not be controversial. It's just a matter of we need to notify the CPC we want to do those 2 charter changes, and they
Yeah.
need to approve it. You have 2 of them, so.
Okay. So I guess we'll take that one. We'll take to the CPC for approval, right?
Yeah, I'm tagging it as cross-project counseling agenda. So
Perfect. Any questions on that one before we move on? Okay, the next one, let's talk about the CI situation. I don't know that we have anything specific on that front. I think I took it off the agenda possibly, yeah, but I think the next concrete step we have is like seeing if we can get some funding or figuring out how to get a sort of somebody who's paid to help improve the CI situation. We did have the statement of work. I've forwarded that on with Matteo and CC to the foundation to kind of ask if there's any possibility there. If the answer is yes, great. If the answer is no, then it fits into can we use some of the other funding mechanisms to fund that? Otherwise, I don't like, and does anybody else have anything else on the CI side we should chat about? Okay, if not, the next one kind of leads a little bit into that. So the open collective for GitHub sponsors. I think the suggestion here is that we just go ahead and turn it on while in parallel we figure out what we do when money comes in. I think there's some suggestions that we should at least document what we're going to do with the money before we do that. I've pointed out in the issue that we already have a Linux crowdfunding account, and we have it's a couple paragraphs description of how the TSC will use the money that comes into that. We could start with something as simple as that for this as well, and then expand on it later on if we wanted to. So I think the part of it is here. There are some concerns that were raised with moving forward, maybe, I don't know, maybe this week it should be TSC people think about it, jump into the issue, continue the discussion, and next week we might ask if anybody has concerns with just moving forward or what we need to do or whatever, if that hasn't been resolved yet. That makes sense? I mean, I guess one question would be is anybody here have any concerns about moving forward with this, and if so, maybe it makes some sense to discuss those or figure out things that would address those concerns or not. Okay, so in absence of that, I'd say like let's leave on the agenda. And if you do have thoughts, jump into the issue, share them, and we'll try and move it in the GitHub issue. Okay, the next one is starting a team for the package examples initiative. This is the package examples number 3. Not sure who added to the agenda. Joy, do you want to talk to that one?
Yes. So this is because this is organizational issue, so I think it would be useful to mention it in the TC meeting. So we're spinning off a package examples report to document well, mostly for the very confusing exports field in package.json and how you're supposed to ship CJS, how you're supposed to ship ESN, and how you're supposed to migrate all of this. So the idea is previously there was this documentation in the API reference doc, which is like not really the right place for it to be. And it has some outdated examples. So the idea is to spin off a new repository and have more like actually runnable or testable examples there, as well as some kind of tutorial, basically similar to what people did with the NAPI effort with the add-on examples. So my proposal is to first delegate this repository to people in the package maintenance team and loaders team and maybe other things that I'm forgetting that are related. And just try to get more people started doing actual work, like writing up examples and tutorials. And after we have more people around, and we can actually start it to have more people joining this thing, because I don't think it's a good idea to just create a team and call for volunteers and people sign up and nothing happens afterwards, and the team becomes a zombie team. I think that happened several times in the past, and I want to avoid that. So this is the proposal of like, let's just delegate the stuff to other things first until we have a new team uh, forming up from existing contributors and maybe contributors that other contributors nominate. So that's basically the idea. And
So-
trying to see if people have opinion about this.
So for example, like, if you delegate it to the package maintenance team, if somebody wanted to became active enough and contributing there, then they would join the package maintenance team. Is that kind of the thought, or?
Yeah, because at the bootstrapping phase, we'll need people to press the approval button, press the merge button. So instead of trying to form a new team and get a bunch of people sign up, but not knowing whether they will commit, let's just use some existing team that are kind of adjacent, even though they have different goals. That's my idea.
I mean, personally, my perspective, as long as those teams agree, it seems like a reasonable way to go. Anybody else have any comments, ideas, concerns?
I guess we can move on.
Okay. Okay, so the next one, Node.js Blue Sky, who should have access to this repository? So this is number sheet 2. If you added it or whatever, please jump in.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing, but for
Yep.
Blue Sky. So my proposal is still giving access to some existing things. I think currently what we have so far are TSC, moderation, social, and releasers. And then we'll probably have some automation developed in this repository that will require some reviews, I guess. And maybe going forward, when we actually have automation, we'll need people to, we'll need to have some kind of review guideline of the content and people actually reviewing posts going out that are about to go, that are like proposed to go out in the Blue Sky account. So the idea is similar. We'll delegate these to existing teams until we have like a dedicated team to all this.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like in my mind, the like my guess of what will work best instead of having like individual reviewers is if we can document pretty well what kind of content we do want to post and then figure out like how do we sort of trust certain people to post that content, right? Like as opposed to having to have a review on every single one. Because we did have automation for the Node Twitter account. But our challenge was like having the people who would actually review those and review them in a timely way and stuff like that. But if we could agree on like this kind of content, we always are happy to post. Like, a release, we're always going to post it, make a post for a release. Great. Then we can just trust releasers to do the right thing on that. Matteo, go ahead.
So the first thing that we have two problems. Okay. The first one is we also need to reply. Okay. A part of the engagement in social media is about replying. Okay. Somebody tag you and doing something about what being tagged. We can decide to never reply. Okay. Doesn't look like a good idea. We can say, I don't know, the people that we reply is we delegate it with the foundation with the rest of the, like we do for the node.js and LinkedIn page and so on and so forth. Okay. This is an option. To be honest, probably the best option because in that way we have staff doing this. Okay. This is the first part. Okay. The second part is about the content. From my point of view, okay, either we go with a very quick response cycle, like I agree we need to have content that is blessed and they just go through without a review. Okay. So releases, other probably releases, nominations, I think that will be fantastic when we nominate somebody, we put out, hey, these people has been not nominated, sorry, when they become a collaborator. So when they become a collaborator, we can put in a tweet and more or less, post on Blue Sky automatically, hey, here it is, and give them a moment of glory or something like that. Okay. For me, that seems pretty good. Okay. Apart from those kind of things, frankly, I think we should take a more conservative approach and says, look, if you want to post any other kind of content, go through the review unless it's this very tight group of people that can essentially do it, but it's highly trusted and maybe they can call each other essentially if it's a problem and something like that. But I presume that will be my case.
Yeah,
I see. Joy, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree that we can have various. So it would kind of like the fast track that we have in the core repo. Like there are certain stuff that can just be fast tracked or just automated. Like you don't even have specific pull requests. It's just like another different GitHub action trigger that just like but we'll have different trigger, which is like the push trigger. For example, if you push to the main branch of this repository, or have a different post process for review content. I think that should work. And in terms of replies, we can also have automation for replies. Because that's something that they have a SDK, which is pretty comprehensive. You can do basically everything with SDK, which is also in Node.js, which I love. It's like a few lines in the action, then you can do it. And I think we can also automate that. We can, for example, if you want to reply to something that's probably need some kind of consensus because we don't always want to reply to everything. We can also kind of have an action that allows people to send in a pull request to reply, like you putting a URL, URL in terms of Blue Sky is like a URI and CID that you want to reply to, and then the content that you want to reply to, and then somebody can review that and if it's good, somebody push the merge button and it's replied. I think we can also kind of automate that in the repository. Of course, we should always have like some fallback. Like not everything has to go through the repository, but it's mostly for example, maintainers, contributors, those who know and are familiar with the pull request process. We can always have like additional access to foundation staff, so that they can, perform actions when needed manually. The repository will be more like a space where we can have where different people can contribute content more directly without having to go through the foundation staff, which previously has some problem because they're in a different time zone and they can, take leaves. Yeah, also, they're just trying to see if we are on the same page. There was another issue about how many accounts should we have? I think so far the opinions that I got from both Blue Sky and in the issue was that we can have one account. Like there are desire of having multiple account, but it's also challenging to have multiple. So the idea is that we can start with just one. And if there's more momentum about or like more energy about spinning off more, we can just spin off more with a like a registered subdomain and have spin-off content over there. But we can just do it baby steps. Just start with one and keep that in mind when we develop automation. For example, you have a key map, a key secret storage of multiple secrets, for example, that kind of thing. But other than that, we can just like start with one. Let's start simple and then spin off more when we have the energy. Just wondering if people are on board with that.
Yeah, I think I jumped in like, yeah, I prefer one. It's only if we get to the point where like there's like, I know in the past on our Twitter account, there were comments like, well, we don't want to post about what's like going on in the project because that's just noise to the followers. And like, if we get to the point where there's content that some group wants to post, but we don't want to go into our main feed, then I think that's maybe where we could think about having more than one. Mateo has his hand up.
I think we want that. I think there is a demand from at least a certain group of the audience to know more about what's happening on the project. Okay, so especially on the current audience that we have on Blue Sky, it's a lot of in the works people. Okay, so I think building that up would be, I think, pretty good. Okay, and even to the point of having an account, either try on the main account and then see if we want to switch to another one, to have an automation that pushes a post every single time a PR is landed. Okay, it's
okay, like so that was that was the only reason why I would even consider two. If we can just get everything into one and like
let's just like
yep.
I think we should be communicating more with the rest of the group. Okay. And so it might be worthwhile to do something like that.
Okay.
I'm just putting it loud. Okay. Like
yeah, no, I like that. Like I'm like, I think we should be talking about what we're doing and hopefully highlighting the good work of what people do and telling people like, hey, there are these working groups, because like that's a good way we tell people to join. So like keeping it in the top of the mind that like, hey, they're happening and here's what they are.
Yeah. The other bit is, why the heck are we not posting on our main accounts when we do TSC meetings? Okay, like this meeting.
Right. Yeah.
It's I'm out joking here, but there is for a lot of people, Node has been a little bit dehumanized. Okay, while instead it's us. So
right. So if we're on that like that, from my perspective, we're all on the same wavelength that we're going to push all that stuff there. Then like yeah, I'd say for one for sure. Roy has his hand up.
Right. I was just gonna say, if we have a more chatty one, like it still should probably not just be automation. Like it should, should probably be humans like writing in a more conversational form instead of just reposting PR links and that kind of stuff, right? Like it should be more like a collaborator wants to highlight something, like they get access, like and I think just to mention something I said here in the chat, but I'm not sure everybody listened in the recording here, but I saw a lot of people commenting on the desire of having like a more essential one, maybe like having the Node.js org being more the essential like releases, like blog posts, that kind of more essential information, and maybe a more chatty one for development stuff, right? Like, and maybe that one, like collaborators could have direct access to highlight a PR, right? A new feature, something a working group is collaborating on. So yeah, that's it.
Joey?
Yeah, I agree that like it's social media. Social media is supposed to be social. So it's the I think the official account should appear to be more human-like instead of just all automated content and big announcement and such. And I think maybe one thing that we can do is we can like just start with the main account and we can start experimenting with that kind of content. And maybe over a while, like we can try out different content. And over a while, we can just post a question, or like if Blue Sky have the poll feature developed by then, we can like have a poll. Do you prefer to see more content like this from this account? If you think otherwise, if like more people agree that they want to see less of this and they want to see it spin off to a different account, we can think about what happened then. But we can experiment. We don't have to make a decision now.
Yeah, I like that idea. The other thing I think is like in terms of the responses, like I think like not everything needs to be a post from the main account, but like if that account can help amplify other people, like collaborators posts, like for example, I always post about the TSC meeting. If the account then reposts that, then if there are any answers, like the person who did the original post can respond versus having to have more automation to respond directly, if you know what I mean. So I think that we should factor that side in as well, in that it's not, we want a bunch of posts from the main account, but also amplifying other people's social interactions, I think would be good as well. Going back to like, hey, it's about the people in a big sense, right?
Yeah, personally, I would, as far as like what I would like to see, I would like instead of having the main account like being the one that posts stuff, I would like to see repost other stuff from other human beings.
Right. So like that would be a good thing. And that might be something where, we can get into figure out what the trust model is. Like, are there people who can fairly easily say like, here, I made a post, I'd like it reposted. And like, it doesn't need a full review by 10 people, right? It's like, yeah, we trust Mateo to only ask for a repost for something that fits in with the content, like the spirit of what the project does, right? Like that's kind of the model we follow in a lot of places. So building up a model like that, I think would help us.
Yeah, I think the next step would be, because I'm still trying, like this is still like a consensus gathering phase. I think next step would be trying to write down draft some kind of guideline about this trust model, basically.
Yeah.
Like what kind of content should be like fast tracked, what kind of content should be uh, subject to a longer period of review, like some technical content, for example. And we kind of make that pull request into the repository and get that out. Well, some automation happens, automation development happens.
Yep.
I think currently like repost, reply, co-post, even follow or like or post, these are all possible through the Blue Sky, well, not Blue Sky, but the AT protocol SDK. So that's like we can already do something with. I have some experiments with SDK, but I haven't done anything with it yet. But I'll probably like start trying to call for help soon to like work on the actions.
Okay. I do notice we are at time, a little bit over. Actually, I gotta drop off, but does anybody else want to stay on as the chair? We are at the end of the agenda, so we could either close out here or I could make somebody else the chair. No, it looks like we're good for this week. Well, thanks for everybody's time, and we will see everybody in GitHub and next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.